Good evening, dreamer. It's so lovely to have you here tonight. I'm Leah, and this is our quiet time together. A moment to breathe deeply, let go of the day, and allow these stories to carry you somewhere gentle. Tonight, I'll share tales like whispered lullabies, stories to calm your mind and warm your heart. If you'd like, close your eyes. Feel the coziness of this moment. And when you're ready, we'll begin. The Moonlight Weaver. Once, in a village cupped between the mountains, where time moved as slow as honey dripping from a spoon, there lived a weaver named Alara. But hers was no ordinary craft. Her threads were spun from moonlight. On the clearest nights, when the moon hung low and generous, Alara would step into the silvered meadows with her spindle. She'd gather strands of light, plucking them from dewdrops, coaxing them from the edges of shadows, until her basket brimmed with luminous thread. By dawn, she'd be at her loom, weaving tapestries that glowed like captured starlight. Mothers hung them in cradles to soothe restless babies, and travelers bought them as guides for dark paths. Ilara's cloth, they said, holds the very breath of the night. But one winter, the clouds rolled in and never left. The moon hid behind a veil of gray, and the meadows grew dull as tarnished silver. Alara's spindle stayed empty. Her loom sat silent. Without her moonlight, she felt her hands grow stiff, her heart heavier with each passing dusk. "What am I," she whispered, "if I cannot weave?" One evening, as she sat by her cold hearth, a great snowy owl alighted on her windowsill. Its eyes were golden discs, wise and ancient. "Why do you mourn, child?" it asked. "The moon has not abandoned you. It waits in your bones." Alara startled. "But my thread is gone. The sky gives me nothing." The owl tilted its head. "Must light only come from above? Close your eyes, weaver. What do you see?" And so Alara did. She remembered the first night she'd seen the northern lights, rippling like a dancer's ribbons, the way the river mirrored the stars on Midsummer Eve. The glow of her grandmother's lamp as she told stories by the fire. Each memory flickered, a tiny, private moon. "Oh," she breathed, "it was never just the sky's light I wove. It was my own." That night, Alara returned to her loom. This time, she didn't wait for the moon. She closed her eyes, let her hands remember their dance, and wove the tapestries of her mind. To her wonder, the cloth began to shine, not with the moon's brilliance, but with something softer, warmer. The patterns told stories. Here, a constellation from her childhood. There, the firefly lit path to her first love. When she held it up, the room hummed with a light that no cloud could dim. Word spread of Alara's new gift. Those who couldn't sleep came to her door, and she'd weave them scraps of cloth stitched with their own brightest memories. A sailor asked for the blue of his daughter's laughter. An old man longed for the gold of his wedding day. And every piece glowed because Alara had learned the secret. Light remembered is light reclaimed. They say she still weaves in that village, though her hair is now as white as owl feathers. On the darkest nights, when the moon refuses to show itself, her cottage windows burn brightest. And if you listen closely, you might hear the whisper of her loom, shuttling back, forth, forth, like a heartbeat, keeping time with the stars. The Clockmaker and Time. In the city of Laron, where the streets coiled like clock springs and the cathedral bell marked hours no one truly felt, there lived an old clockmaker named Samuel. His shop crouched in the shadow of the great clock tower, its windows fogged with the breath of 1,000 ticking mechanisms. But Samuel repaired more than clocks. He fixed broken rhythms. The hurried merchant who'd forgotten to eat. The widow who couldn't sleep past dawn. To each, he gave a timepiece tuned to the pace their soul required. Then, on an evening bruised purple with twilight, a stranger arrived. His cloak smelled of distant deserts, and in his palm lay a clock unlike any other, its casing etched with phases of the moon, its hands frozen at 11:11. "It stops," the traveler said, "and when it does, time stops with it." Samuel lifted the watch to his ear. Not a tick, not a talk, only silence, thick as velvet. For days Samuel labored. He oiled the gears with night-blooming jasmine, for time is sweetest when unwatched. He replaced the spring with a filament of his own silver hair, for what binds time but mortality? Still, the hands refused to move. Exhausted, he collapsed into his chair. And that's when he heard it. A sound like a moth's wings against glass. Not the clock's mechanism, but its pulse. So Samuel did something radical. He stopped trying to fix it. Night after night, he sat with the clock as one sits with a grieving friend. He let it chime with his own heartbeat. He learned its language. The whisper of its gears was the wind in olive groves. Its stillness, the pause between two lovers' breaths. And on the 7th night, as Samuel hummed an old lullaby his mother once sang, the clock shuddered. With a sound like a sigh, its hands began to turn. Not forward, but backward, then sideways, then in spirals, weaving time like thread. The traveler returned at dawn. "You've mended it," he murmured. Samuel shook his head. "No, I stopped fearing its brokenness." "And here's the secret," the clock whispered. "Time cannot be controlled, only cherished." The merchant who raced against it learned to taste his morning tea. The widow let her nights stretch long as river shadows. As for Samuel, he kept the moon phase clock in his shop window, where it keeps its own strange rhythm. Some days it races, others it naps in the noon light. But those who pause to listen always leave softer-footed, as though walking on the surface of a dream. So, if you ever pass through Laron, listen for the flicker of mismatched ticks. And remember, the moments that matter are rarely the ones we measure. The Keeper of Lost Lullabies. There exists a place, not quite here, not quite there, where melodies go when they slip through the cracks of memory. A garden of half-remembered songs, tended by an ancient woman with hands like parchment and hair like cobwebs spun from moonlight. She is the keeper of lost lullabies, and her duty is sacred, to preserve every hummed tune, every forgotten refrain, every "hush now, darling," that time has worn thin. The garden itself grows in the shape of a spiral. Along its paths, silver pear trees, heavy with fruit, whisper unfinished choruses. Willows weep verses into glass ponds. Even the dandelions release seeds that hum as they float away. But the most precious treasures hang from the branches, crystalline orbs, each holding a lullaby someone once loved and lost. One evening, when the sky was the color of worn violet and sleep clung stubbornly to the edges of the world, a boy named Leo stumbled into the garden, not with his feet, for his body lay tossing in bed, but with that part of us that wanders when we stare too long at the ceiling, chasing sleep. "I've forgotten," he murmured, his voice cracking like dry leaves. "My grandmother's song, the one she sang when storms kept me awake. I can almost feel it, but..." "But the notes won't come?" the keeper finished, her voice the sound of pages turning. She reached for a pear that glowed like a captured firefly. "Bite gently." As Leo's teeth pierced the fruit, the garden dissolved. Suddenly, he stood in a memory, his grandmother rocking him, her knuckles rough against his back, her voice singing words in a language he didn't know but understood perfectly. "Sleep, little wolf. The moon guards your den." And then the memory multiplied. He heard a fisherman's daughter humming to her nets, "Mend the holes, mend the fears." A lone traveler's whistle echoing through a canyon, "You are never lost." Even the wordless croon of a young mother inventing a melody for her newborn as she counted his toes. 1,000 lullabies, each a fragile, glowing thing. "How?" Leo breathed, tears hot on his cheeks. The keeper wiped his face with her sleeve, which smelled of lavender and ink. "Every lullaby ever sung still exists. In the creak of a rocking chair, in the rhythm of a night train, even in silence. For what is a pause but the space where music rests?" She pressed the pear's core into his palm. "Plant this when you wake." And so he did. Leo woke with a start, his pillow damp, his fingers curled tight. Outside, dawn blushed at the horizon. He rushed to the windowsill, buried the seeds in a pot of soil, and waited. It grew slowly, a slender tree with leaves shaped like eighth notes. That winter, when storms rattled the shutters, Leo curled beneath its branches, and if he listened very closely, he could hear them. Not just his grandmother's voice, but all the others too, woven into the rustling leaves. A chorus of comfort, singing, "You are not alone." As for the keeper, she still tends her garden. Perhaps you've visited there yourself in those restless moments before sleep claims you. If you ever catch a strain of music with no source, a hum in the radiator, a tune in the drip of the faucet, know this: it's no accident. It's a lost lullaby finding its way home.
The Candlemaker's Daughter. In the village of Valen, where the sun lingered for only a few shy hours each winter, people spoke of darkness as one might speak of a hungry wolf at the door. They nailed shutters tight, lit lanterns in every window, and hurried home before twilight could catch them. But in a crooked little shop at the edge of town, young Mira saw what others did not. Darkness was not the enemy of light, but its dance partner. Her father's candle-making shop smelled of honeyed beeswax and forgotten summers. While he crafted tapers and pillars, Mira perfected tiny candle wicks, no thicker than a spider's thread, that burned for mere minutes. Their brief lives spent painting golden circles on the walls. "Why make something so fleeting?" the villagers asked. Mira would only smile. "Not all light must last to matter." Then came the long twilight. One autumn, the sun set and did not return. Day after day, the sky hung like a gray curtain. The villagers panicked. They burned candles in stacks, torched whole logs in the square. Yet the darkness devoured every flame before it could cast a shadow. Even Mira's father, his hands raw from pouring endless candles, whispered, "We will drown in this dark." But Mira noticed something strange. The harder people fought the night, the hungrier it became. Their terror seemed to feed it. On the 7th day, she climbed Blackthorn Hill, a place so high the wind there tasted of starlight. In her pocket, a single candle, unlit. The villagers called her a fool. One candle against this endless night? Mira sat. She folded her hands in her lap, and for the first time since the darkness fell, she listened. The night breathed against her cheek. It hummed in her ears, a sound like distant cathedral bells heard underwater. Tentatively, she reached out and her fingers brushed something vast and velvety, thrumming with a rhythm older than fire. The darkness was alive, and it was lonely. "You've only ever been met with torches," she realized. "No wonder you bite." Slowly, she drew out her candle, not to attack, but to introduce. The match flared, the wick caught, and this time, the darkness did not swallow the light. It leaned close, curious. The flame bent, as if in conversation, casting shadows that twined up Mira's arms like affectionate cats. On the hillside below, villagers gasped as shapes bloomed against the clouds. A stag made of smoke, a constellation of swaying willows, 1,000 stories written in ash and air. By dawn, though no sun rose, every household in Valen had blown out their torches. Instead, they lit Mira's slender candles, brief, bright, unafraid to flicker. And the darkness, no longer starved for kindness, cradled those little lights like precious gems in a velvet pouch. Years later, travelers would remark on how Valen's nights were the softest they'd ever known. "How do you endure so much darkness?" they'd ask. The villagers would hand them a candle, no thicker than a spider's thread, and whisper Mira's lesson. Darkness is not a thing to endure. It is the quiet friend who holds your light until you need it. As for Mira, you might spot her still climbing Blackthorn Hill at twilight. She carries no lantern, but if you squint, you'll see her cupping something in her palms. A single, trembling flame, dancing cheek to cheek with the dark.
Now, as you settle deeper into your blankets, let the darkness around you feel like Valen's nights, not empty, but full of quiet companionship. Your thoughts can be those little candles. No need to blaze, just enough to remind you you are safe here in the arms of the kindly dark. Sleep well.